key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension, a dimension of truth, a dimension of freedom, a dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
God, I love that, where reason meets reality. Hello, folks. I've been gone for a while. I'm your host, Mark Pellegrino, also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and the vice chair of the American Capitalist Party, Michael Liebowitz, who is also the host of his own show, The Rational Egoist. Man, in crazy times like this, with such crazy political dissent going tribal warfare literally across the trenches, we need rational egoism as the moral ideal out there. So tell me what's going on with your show and how we can promote it so that it becomes the dominant moral ethics out there instead of altruism and tribalism.
Today, we have an episode brand new out. I interviewed an objectivist who is also an investor and an author. He has a new book out called Moneyball Investing, or the Moneyball Method. And it's about objective investing. It's directed toward the middle class. I highly recommend it. It was a good talk. Very good talk.
Great. What's his name?
Mark Shoup. I forgot to say, yeah, Mark Shoup is his name.
Mark Shoup. Now, that name is not familiar to me in objectivist circles. Should it be?
I don't know. I believe he's a member of the American Capitalist Party, but
well, wonderful. Is he? Is he a donating member of the American Capitalist?
Well, I don't know. I didn't. I didn't interrogate the guy. I just interviewed him.
Well,
but he is on Facebook. He is on Facebook. Facebook tends to be a nicer, gentler social media platform, so I understand why you stay off of it. Because you're not really the kind and gentle type, despite the fact what this audience is now trying to paint you out to be.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I'm not kind and gentle to people who are not kind and gentle. That's for sure, because I don't believe that they deserve kindness and gentleness. Now, folks, I don't have a microphone here, so there's going to be times when my cohort here is going to be able to outshout me, and you'll just hear me. You'll see my mouth moving, but you won't hear me. So this is an unfair situation at the moment right now. I can't correct it until I get back to Los Angeles.
What are you saying now, Mark? What are you talking about?
Yeah, so you can't hear me, see? but I will be able to correct it when I get back to Los Angeles on Tuesday. Tuesday I will be preoccupied, of course, taking care of Frankie and stuff. But Wednesday, I will be back on for a little while until I have to come back to Toronto to work. So, folks, it's been a crazy week. I know I've been a little disengaged from the news, Michael. To be honest with you, for the past 6 or 7 days, I've been, of course, preoccupied with stuff going on in my own life. So I've missed a lot of the insanity going on out there in the world. But something that strikes me as interesting was came from a Free Press article that you sent me, which I find so I should cry, but I'm laughing at it. And it went something like this, folks. I'm just going to read it straight out for you. Hundreds of federal employees laid off by Elon Musk's DOGE team earlier this year might soon return to work. The General Services Administration, which manages the basic functioning of federal agencies, is asking laid-off workers to return to duty after what amounted to a 7-month, get this, folks, paid vacation. Okay, it's not even like those funds weren't going to these people who were temporarily removed by DOGE as superfluous. They were still getting paid by taxpayer dollars. Other federal agencies, including the IRS and the National Park Services, are likely trying to bring back or hold on to staffers fired by DOGE. So much for shrinking the swamp, Michael.
Yeah, so much for sinking, whatever it is, draining the swamp, sinking it. I don't know. I know that I never had any trust or confidence in DOGE actually cutting government. Even if these people were laid off permanently, it wasn't much of a cut, but now some of them aren't even laid off. It's a joke. I mean, I don't know, it's just not a very funny one. You know what I mean? Somebody told me this morning in response to a post on Facebook that the Democrats, are the party of big government. And I just asked him, okay, when have the Republicans ever cut government? Go, just tell me. He says, well, at least they claim they're going to do it. And I'm just thinking, okay, so the virtue of the Republican Party is that they lie to you. That's good. Like it just seems so freaking ridiculous to me.
Or the virtue is that they make promises they can't keep and never do.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if you're a tribesman, you have to come up with some rationalization to stay in the tribe. I think the better solution, though, folks, would be to leave that tribe entirely and go to a place where principles matter, where individual rights matter, where egoism matters. That place is called the American Capitalist Party, and you can find us at americancapitalistparty.org. I suggest you go there and read the policies and on the platform. I think you will find something refreshing about them. And you should also like and subscribe to this station so that more people get the message that rational egoism is good, that individual rights is good. It is the moral foundation of a free society, and that is the foundation that we at the American Capitalist Party endorse. I forgot, Michael. I forgot to say, we are not affiliated with the American Capitalist Party. Everything we say here with respect to the news is our own opinions, even though we are the chair and vice chair of the American Capitalist Party. This is just us talking, folks. Just us.
We're talking to people from Germany. We have an abundance of Germans in the audience today. This is great. If we can develop a large German following, that would be awesome. They're filling up the comments, and they're not bots or they're not trolls anyway. They're nice people. They're all sending their love from Germany.
Thank you guys in Germany. I so appreciate you so much. I remember going to Germany. We did a short film there, Michael, in a series of shorts called Strangers in a Strange Land, which we have never put out there yet. It's sitting on our shelf. My wife wants to redo 2 of the films, which I think is impossible for us to do. So the film may never see the light of day, but the shorts are amazing. And I remember we had a bar that we got for a location. And we needed people to fill up the bar. So I just tweeted out to German fans of the Supernatural family, and tons of them showed up. We actually filled up this whole bar, and they became extras in this wonderful, wonderful little film that my wife wrote, which I hope does see the light of day. But so that's my feeling about the German fans. You guys are awesome.
Katrin evidently bought them there. Hey, do you eat peanut butter sandwiches?
Of course I do.
How often?
All the time.
Come on.
Yeah.
Well, what's all the time?
Like every day.
Really?
Oh yeah, I love peanut butter.
I did not know that. Every day, pretty much for lunch, I have a peanut butter sandwich.
What kind of bread do you put it on?
Wheat or honey wheat.
Okay.
What? What do you mean? What's your beef?
No, you got to go for something a little bit more high grain and more intense, and sometimes protein intensive. Like I think Dave's bread is really good.
Who's he?
Well, he has a brand of bread called Dave's Bread.
I've never seen this.
Yes, well, you can't. It's probably there in Connecticut too.
No, I know where it is. It's in highfalutin Hollywood actor supermarkets where you and Angelina Jolie go shopping together.
Not just in Whole Foods. It's not just in Bristol Farms. I doubt it's even in Bristol Farms. It would probably be in you have a Ralph's out there, a Vons, or a Kroger. It'll be in a Kroger. Whatever.
I've never heard of any of these places.
You've never heard of Vons, Ralph's?
No, these are the places. Once you make a couple movies, they give you the pass, and you can go to these places.
Vons, Ralph's, or Kroger? No.
Yeah, I never heard of these places.
Everybody goes to.
No, nobody's heard of them.
What do you do? The mini mart down the street? Where do you shop?
Are you mocking my shopping habits? I go to Stop and Shop like your average low to middle class guy. I either go to there or I go to Aldi. Sometimes CVS.
Aldi. I'm sure it'll be at Aldi. All right. I'm sure it'll be at Aldi. You mentioned only like one normal shopping chain. The other one is just some. I don't know. I don't want to.
Stop and Shop.
Stop and Shop. What is a Stop and Shop? I don't even know. Okay, look. I have something to say about Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
Not a big peanut butter fan, from what I understand.
How do you know this about him?
I just made it up.
Okay.
All right. Can we get back to some facts here? Persephone's getting annoyed.
In keeping with establishment media, you are just making shit up.
Yes.
And this is where we are supposed to be different, because we're not making stuff up. This also comes from the Free Press, by the way, and I wanted to read it straight out, and I wanted to get your opinion about this. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said that he was a little bit surprised by Trump's sudden endorsement of Ukraine's fight to reclaim all its territory from Russia. Who wouldn't be? But I can't say who wouldn't be, because Trump is a flighty guy. He's an impulsive guy. He goes with his quote unquote instincts, which change from moment to moment. So it shouldn't be a surprise that at one time he was saying, "Look, Zelensky, you hold none of the cards. Shut up. It's just going to be this way." And now he's going another way, partly because he feels a little bit dissed by his boyfriend, Putin, to be honest with you.
That's the key right there.
It's because he feels dissed by Putin. All this time he's proclaimed himself as the king of the hill. There's no way that Putin would have started this war on his watch. And now Putin is jamming his face in his boot every single day that Trump proclaims they have some kind of special relationship, or they're making some kind of progress.
I don't think that's his boot. I'm just saying.
You know what I was being polite. But he just keeps shoving his nose in the fact that Putin's the one who's actually leading the charge here. Trump has nothing to do with it, and his opinions have nothing to do with it. But Trump says something sort of interesting here, which I think is true. Trump's reversal in which he declared Russia a paper tiger. I do think Russia is a paper tiger, and I think that should we give Zelensky true weapons there, he can knock out some of this military infrastructure and energy infrastructure of Russia. They are toast. I mean, they've been in a wartime economy for 6 years. That means everything they create is meant to be destroyed. So it's a non-value producing economy. They're living by the thinnest of margins because they're able to sell some of their oil resources to the European Union and to other countries. But that hopefully will start drying up, but one never knows. Pragmatic politicians are capable of almost anything. But it's literally an economy in near shambles. I mean, they are a near collapse. So a few well-placed drone strikes in energy infrastructure and other forms of infrastructure could seriously damage the Russian cause. I don't think that anybody should be negotiating with Putin, to be honest with you. I don't think there should be negotiations with aggressors. I think you have to simply beat them into submission and make them surrender. But that's my own particular feelings about this. What say you? I know we both are not what can be considered experts on the Ukrainian situation.
I'm actually far more interested in the change, because JD Vance has come out and said there's no change at all, that there's been no change in approach or policy from Trump, which obviously is not true. I think that all it's going to take is that Putin maybe kiss Trump's butt a little bit, and then Trump will be back the other way. The problem here is the inconsistency. That I'm not an expert on international politics or Russia, Ukraine, but I do know one thing. When people act, they need to understand the consequences that their actions are going to have. Otherwise, it makes it very difficult. And nobody in the world understands what the hell Trump is going to do. You just don't know. So, yet all of a sudden Putin's a paper tiger, Russia's a paper tiger, whatever. Like somebody actually said to me, Trump, he gave him a wonderful speech at the UN. You should be praising him and this and that. And I'm like, it's a speech. It's one speech. Like my life isn't lived in disconnected moments where he says one nice thing and I forget it. I was listening to, as I told you when we were off air, I've been listening to Charlie Kirk so that I could get an understanding of his views, and, we can eventually do a show about it. And one of the things that he said was that in his negotiations with Putin and Zelensky, Trump put on a masterclass. And I'm just like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Masterclass. This guy is a buffoon. Utter buffoon. And I just it's good that he's now saying that Ukraine is not the bad guy, I guess, but I don't know how good it is when it could change at any moment.
Exactly. You can't take Trump seriously because he is, if anything, inconstant. Now, Akira Felix says, because Putin made moves around Poland, Trump doesn't want to look weak, but to quote Carole King, it's too late. Now, I agree with part of this sentiment. Certainly, Trump when he's postured as the strong man, has never, ever delivered. And I'm wondering what the world community is going to start to realize. Putin clearly probably already does, that whenever Trump says bad things are going to happen, it's really not true. It's really not true. He really never has backed up a single threat with a military action that is in any way substantial enough to create differences within the countries that he is apparently trying to influence. Now, apparently, Putin did make these incursions into Polish territory with drones, right? And they were shot out of the sky. The American Communist Party, of course, is saying that it's all fake. It's all fake news. This really didn't happen. It's just the attempt on the part of the establishment and the fascist establishment, which they claim predominates in America, to start a world war. Now, I think NATO did right by shooting down those drones. I think they should continue to hobble Putin's presence whenever they can. I think they should even do more, including wipe the man off the face of the earth. The earth would be a better place without him. But of course, they're hesitant to do that. But yes, Trump has shown himself to be a weak leader, in my view, weaker than as weak as Biden. At least Biden wasn't indecisive and vacillating back and forth all the time, like Trump. And nor was he necessarily making threats that he never backed up. Remember when Trump said, "Return the hostages by Saturday, or all hell will break loose," or something?
Yes.
Like that.
Yes.
Exactly nothing happened. What he did was he said, "Israel, do your thing." Okay. Thank you for that. What do you think of that? Do you think Trump has shown himself to be a strong leader on the world stage?
No, I don't. I'm far more, what's the word I'm looking for here, Mark? I'm far more interested in the cultural moment that has Trump as our president than I am in his ridiculousness. I've never bought that he was this tough guy. I still don't. I think he's an insecure twit. And that's demonstrated, by the way. You know, I sent you another story where they've got the Walk of Fame there in the White House, and
yeah,
not all the presidents. And Trump puts up a picture of the auto pen. It's just that's the behavior of a child. That's not the behavior of an adult. And I see his followers on X, ha ha ha, like they're just like schoolyard bullies. But the funny thing is with the bullies on the internet is I really think, and I include the bullies on the internet with those types of bullies that do things like that, put up an auto pen and think it's hilarious. I think these are people that got bullied in high school and now and couldn't have sex in high school, and now are using this as their get back opportunity.
Exactly.
That's really what I think is going on to a large extent.
Oh, I totally agree with you there. And how adolescent is it for the president of the United States on this wall of fame to put the auto pen there? I mean, it's like a high school prank. I mean, this is a 70-something-year-old man. He's nearly 80 years old. He's supposedly an accomplished, even though, of course, that's up for debate, businessman, multi-billionaire, also up for debate. And the most powerful man in the world. I mean, and yet to stoop to such a petty level as to denigrate even a guy like Biden, who clearly was a political hack and exploited the system for his own gain, and clearly used his political position to ingratiate himself to oftentimes hostile governments so that he could gain personally. This is sort of beyond question, but still put his picture up there with the rest of it.
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about, if we're going to start deciding which presidents shouldn't be included, I mean, we could go and pick plenty. I mean, let's get Andrew Jackson out of there for starters, but they're all presidents. If you're going to have a list of the presidents,
now, why would you tell me about why you would get Andrew Jackson?
He was a racist, advocated slavery, populism, all that sort of stuff. I mean, he just used the spoil system. He was big with that. I'm not a fan of him. Jim Valiant makes this point, and this is a good point. He says, how many times did Biden say don't? But they did a ton. And I remember when Obama, and I was by no means in favor of going to war with Syria or doing anything to Syria. But by that point, I was already far more of a non-interventionist once Obama was in there. But I knew this. When Obama said there's a red line, that if they use biological or chemical weapons, then there's going to be big consequences. And then they did it and he did nothing. That's a mistake. You don't make threats and then not follow through with them. And yes.
But here's the difference. Everybody sort of expects the Democrats to be, when it comes to asserting violence on the international stage, the modern Democrats at least, they assume them to be more pacifistic, and they assume that they're going to draw lines in the sand that they will not cross. Trump got in by virtue of having a reputation as a tough guy. I mean, nobody assumed Obama was a tough guy. Nobody assumed Biden was a tough guy, as much as he tried to present himself as such. Nobody thought that. But they thought this guy was this kid who grew up in Queens. He's a tough street fighter. He, dealt with the mob when he's in his real estate years. This is a guy who, when he makes a threat, it's real, and the whole world is standing on edge in fear of him. I'm sorry, it's quite the opposite. They've figured this guy's personality out. They know he's a malignant narcissist. They know that what appeals to him, his vanity, is being praised and feigning obsequiousness to him. You can get almost anything you want from him, and they are playing him like a fucking violin. But when you get in on a platform of being the tough guy, but you don't deliver, come on. That's even worse.
There's a video that I love because I know all about it. Mike Tyson gives a video and he said, I love tough guys. He says, all these tough guys in prison, they're real tough until I bring the pain to them. They're not tough. And I've seen it happen so many times in my life. I've seen it happen in prison. But I have always been dumbfounded that anybody thought that this was a tough guy. It's so obvious that he's not, but people bought it. Now, I like numbers in reference to what I said about Andrew Jackson. It says every 19th century president was racist by today's standards. Okay, but not every 19th century president defended slavery. Not every 19th century president was into the spoil system. Not every 19th century president, where's the quote here? I want to get it up here from Enric. The deadly relocation of the Cherokees was done by Jackson.
He forced migrated the Cherokees.
Right. I mean, so
not to mention carried on the Seminole War and annihilated the Seminole people from Florida just so that he could annex Florida into the United States.
Right. And the idea, there's two things that, yes, it's true that it was much harder back then to when things were common, to know right from wrong. That I get it, but there's still objective standards of morality, and those standards still apply. Now you have to take context into consideration. I know, but there was plenty of people in the 17th, in the 18th century at least, that knew slavery was an abomination. Right, that knew slavery was wrong, that spoke out against it. So the fact that, Jackson was a racist, but so were the other presidents, I don't know I know it's not an excuse for his behavior.
Indeed. Jackson was a tad unhinged, my friend, in many respects. So there's been a lot of controversy lately, and I listened to a little bit of Yaron Brook the other day about which side is more violent, the right or the left. And it turns out Cato Institute did a study about this, and it turns out that right-wing violence is far more deadly and prevalent than left-wing violence, even though we get a steady diet of left-wing ideation of violence, certainly, and calls to violence and calls to action. We see protests whereby a certain kind of violence is being instituted against people by preventing them to go to classes or blocking traffic or vandalizing buildings and stuff like that. Apparently, the far more deadly versions of acts of political violence are occurring on the right. Now, I haven't done an in-depth study about this, but you sent me an article from ABC News on the Charlie Kirk shooting and a timeline of political violence in America. And it basically lists a timeline that starts from January 8th, 2011, and goes down the list of right and left political violence. I'm trying to find a time that's comparable in history where it seems like, I guess we all think our generation is somehow unique. We all think that the experiences that we're experiencing are somehow different than past experiences, but it's not like we haven't been through periods of extreme political violence on the left and the right. I mean, I think in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the anarchists and the communists were infiltrating the union movements and the wobblies that were creating great violence in the labor movement. And of course, the capitalists were trying to defend their property by the use of troops, and it became very violent. So there's a lot of left-wing violence through the 20s, and of course, worldwide, we could say there's lots of left-wing violence through the communist governments that commit mass murder on their own people, and espionage and subterfuge in other countries. But it feels like this time that we're in is akin to the 60s, the mid to late 60s, where there's racial tension and strife and political tension and strife, and it's being expressed in violence as opposed to dialogue between two opposing sides. Now, what do you think about this? Do you think we're sort of re-experiencing a 1968, a 65 to 68?
I don't know. I think it's very difficult to judge one's situation when we're in it. It makes it very difficult. There's some things, though, that I really find, I don't know if interesting is the word I'm looking for, but one of the things is this immediate rush to judgment whenever one of these things happens. So, for instance, when Charlie Kirk got shot, we saw an immediate rush from right wing and left wing, influencers, commentators, whatever, coming out to try to paint it as if it were somebody from the other side that did it. Now, this is before, we even knew who it was. And people were saying, oh, it was this extremist. I remember when the people got killed in Minnesota, and there was an immediate rush. There was somebody telling me this was a left-wing extremist. Of course, turned out it wasn't. That's so dangerous in my view. And it happened again with this shooting at the ICE headquarters yesterday. I still haven't found online a motive. All I found is that somebody wrote, that the guy evidently wrote on the bullets, anti-ICE. That's it. But yeah, it's this
has now become a thing since Mangione murdered CEO of United Health.
Yes. So now it's all over the place. This is left-wing violence. Benny Johnson saying we need to declare a national emergency to combat left-wing violence. Listen, that is not the way to go. Governments do this. It's like what Rahm Emanuel said, never let a crisis go to waste. They're trying to gin up fear and terror as a means to increase power and accomplish their agenda. If we as Americans allow this, we are the dumbest people on the planet. We might as well try to invade Russia in the winter. I mean, it's so idiotic. But beyond that, so both sides are sort of out there, and they want to rush to any crime that's committed. It's the other guy. But there's one thing that I have found that's been taking place. It's the denial. And what I mean by that, while not a political case, for instance, what happened to George Floyd, after that happened, almost immediately, there has been an attempt to vindicate Derek Chauvin, the cop that did it, to vilify George Floyd, and to say that George Floyd died of a drug overdose. To the point where, as I was listening to the Charlie Kirk stuff, Charlie Kirk comes on and says, George Floyd died of an overdose. The expert he brings on to talk about how George Floyd died of an overdose, what's his name there? Ben Shapiro, right? So neither of these two are the people I'm going to interpret an autopsy for me. So in the case of George Floyd, I know there were two autopsies. Over 10 medical experts testified. A jury of Chauvin's peers found them guilty of murder. Radley Balco wrote an excellent series of papers on the issue. But yet, so many people will tell you, no, he died of an overdose, not from a cop misusing his power and using an inappropriate technique. Similarly, if you look at what happened on January 6th, immediately afterward, there were voices coming out saying it was not right wingers. It was actually Antifa. It was actually the FBI that did it. Or they said, no, it actually was not violent. The protesters actually were welcomed into the building. Whatever it was, there was no, I like numbers. Overdose was not on one of the 2 autopsies. No, it was not. Stop, please. It's not true. Period.
There's certainly a great deal of controversy over what actually killed George Floyd, because
there really isn't.
There really
isn't. There really not.
I've heard reports, and it could be wrong, but you've read more than I have, so I'm going to defer.
Mark,
to you. But
okay.
Wait, but let me finish, and then you can talk, because I assume you know more about this than I have. You've studied more about it than I have. But I have heard reports that his heart was in terrible condition due to chronic drug abuse and that he had lethal levels of fentanyl in his body.
Okay, stop right there. Stop right there. Just slow down for 1 second.
Levels of fentanyl.
Okay, let's just stop. What is a lethal level of fentanyl?
This I do not know, but
okay. Would you say that a lethal level of fentanyl would be different between Persephone and if I were to go and pick up an addict on Wethersfield Avenue here in Hartford?
Certainly a lethal level would be contextual.
Okay, so to say there's a lethal level is nonsensical right off the bat. That's just a dumb thing to say.
Of course, I'm assuming they are considering his weight, age, and relative cardiovascular.
Here's what they could not know: his tolerance level.
That's true.
They could not know it. So you say that there's a controversy.
But they also say that he was, now there was also apparently, now I don't want to rehash all this controversy because I'm not very clear on it and I haven't done a great study of it. So I'm only sort of rehashing talking points that may have already been disproven. But apparently they didn't allow body camera footage that would have demonstrated that he was already saying he couldn't breathe when he was in the car, which of course makes it doubly bad for Chauvin to.
Yeah, okay, he's saying he can't breathe, so let's drag him out and put our knee on his neck.
For sure.
I mean, again, I highly suggest anybody out there go read Radley Balco on the issue. He totally picked apart.
Post that. If we can post that,
I have to find it. But there was this video of Minnesota falling that was used to justify or clear Chauvin, and Radley Balco absolutely destroyed it. But Mark, the very fact that you say there's a controversy because there's been a concerted attempt to vindicate Derek Chauvin. In the same way, there's the concerted attempt to vindicate the people on January 6th. The reason that I say this is because if you were to argue and say, look, we've had these political incidents, we've had violence all over the place, immediately what you're going to get is no, that never happened, that didn't happen, it's not true. So now instead of just naming things that are facts, you end up having to argue about actually what occurred. And when you have an information ecosystem that's formed to justify your viewpoint, it's insane to argue about these things because you just can't do it. There's no source you can go to. When I was incarcerated, Brent McCall and I argued all the time. Best friend, argued all the time. We had a simple method. If we argued over the meaning of a word, the definition of a word, we went to a dictionary, solved it. Right? If we had a historical question, we would go, say, to an almanac. We didn't go to an almanac, right? Look up what happened historically. And then after one of us was proven wrong, start arguing again. And say, no, now the almanac's wrong.
Right.
So
we definitely are living in a world where narratives and tribal protection is more important than the truth. And people are invested in protecting their tribes. And that's a very dangerous situation to be in, folks, because truth loses, and you need the truth in order to make the right decisions in your life, in order to pursue the right values, in order to pursue justice, for crying out loud. The truth is what needs to rise to the surface. But, Michael, there's I mean, people are so cynical about the entire establishment because they understand both sides are so contaminated and so self-protective and so about gaining the levers of power that they feel that any news that comes out of the establishment is tainted by the spin from that side. And so it automatically starts the conspiracy feelings going on both sides. You know, I know people on the left who said Trump wasn't really shot. None of that really happened.
I've seen that too. The ear doesn't grow back and this and that. Yeah, it's so stupid.
It was a piece of glass that hit him and they're making it into something else to, you know, it's performative. It's all performative. Some even people said the whole thing was faked. That, you know, that I know some people thought he had like a blood sponge in his hand that he put up again when he went down, that he put up against his ear like you do in the theater, so that when they brought him up, he had this moment. I mean, the conspiracy theories and the out of touchness with reality and fact is just epidemic on both sides. So what does that mean, folks? Don't choose those sides. Choose the American Capitalist Party, AmericanCapitalistParty.org, where we search for the truth and we let the truth be our guide, even if it means our initial presumptions are wrong. And that is exactly the way you should be. Always checking your premises against reality, because it's reality that is the arbiter should be the arbiter of the choices that you make.
Mark, did you read the stuff I sent you from Grok by any chance?
Yes, I did.
Good, because I would like to discuss it, because there's a few things that I've been hearing for decades. I just want to say that in my experience, this stuff began with the left, and now the right has picked up the same tactics. And what I mean by that is the tactic of basically, you know, you call your opponent. The left used to call I hate saying the left, but I don't know what else to say. A lot of people on the left referred to George W. Bush as Hitler. He's a Nazi. He's a fascist. You know, if you're opposed to affirmative action or you want tax cuts, you're a racist. They were real big on that kind of stuff. You know, Joe Biden saying we're going to put you all back in chains, or I mean, you know, Romney's going to put you all back in chains. There was a lot of that. And now the right has come on, and they, you know, everybody that they don't like is a commie, a threat to America. They're, you know, fascist in some sense, or totalitarians. I've even heard them called demons. And then what we have is often the very people who use this language say the other side needs to dial down the rhetoric. So I gave you know, I just went through Grok this morning. I understand Grok's not the end all and be all, but what it said certainly comports with my experience. And so I sent it to you, and it shows a lot of examples of people who have used this type of language. And in many cases, they're the same ones. We need to really dial this down. It's so disgusting and so hypocritical. Go, you tell me what you think.
Oh, no, I agree with you. There's, you know, one side can't claim moral superiority over the other in this respect. And what's ironic, though, Michael, is that, I mean, a guy like me, I feel like politics are very intimately linked to ethics. So I've always sort of thought that when the left called the right evil, and the right claimed, no, we just think you're stupid, that there was a moral disconnect on the right that didn't exist on the left. I actually thought the left was sort of appropriate in viewing the right as evil, because if their values were completely misaligned, and the left considers their values to be the values to live by, or that a society should organize itself by, how could the opposite side of that, which the right really isn't in reality, but they assumed it is, how could the opposite of that be considered good? For example, I consider communists evil. I consider communism an evil ideology. Now, some people gravitate towards it for different reasons, certainly, and I can't necessarily call each and every person who gravitates to communism an evil person, but it's certainly an evil ideology. And certainly the ones I see online preach values that I find absolutely abhorrent, evil, violent in nature, and would not hesitate to call them that in reality, and often do. So I liked the fact that the left for a while linked its politics to ethics, but the right is now, I think, experiencing a cultural ascendancy. And because they've been on the fringes for so long, I think what we're experiencing now is a kind of revenge fuck. I think they're just so upset for being on the outside and for being vilified and condescended to by the left that now it's time to get their one up, to get one up over them. And they think Trump is their guy because Trump seems to be, he seems to fight, in their opinion. This is what I hear from people, MAGA people, who have felt marginalized by the left for so long, that no matter what you say to them about Trump, they still think, well, he's our guy because he fights. But this kind of discourse, folks, all it's doing is feeding a certain kind of constituency. It's not making it's not creating political hygiene. It's not making us safer. It's not even really dealing with the issues that we need to deal with. It's really about two tribes fighting with each other for dominance and to assert their will over the people. It's not about, well, what should governance really be? And what should the individual's relationship really be to the government? All that's being lost in the minutia of these ridiculous intramural fights. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying I agree with you, but go ahead.
Race Jacobson actually convinced me of something the other day. Those familiar with Leonard Peikoff's dim hypothesis, disintegration, integration, and misintegration, Leonard predicted that I believe an M2 society was coming. That is a religious society. And people have said, well, Trump represents that. And I said, no, Trump represents disintegration of values, of epistemology, of, traditions. But then race convinced me of something, and I'm rethinking it, and I'm incorporating all of this into my view, even as I am talking now. Race convinced me that Trump, yes, is a destroyer, but his following is the M2, the religious right, or the nationalist religious right, Christian nationalist. I also think that there's a third component, though. I think there's the people that follow Trump that just are middle class, are fed up, want to have jobs, are tired of being labeled as racists. They don't want to be basically relegated anymore. So I think there's those people as well. But I do think that there's a big movement within MAGA represented by the Charlie Kirks, the Benny Johnsons, the Steve Bannons of the world that would really like to implement the M2, the Christian nationalism stuff. So that's where I'm at right now when it comes to that. And I just thank Race Jacobson for that insight, Race. Thank you very much. Now, I don't know what I'm going to do because Mark has disappeared. I guess I could bring Persephone on. No, Mark is back. That's definitely not Persephone.
I was listening. I just had to do something real quick. Yeah, I think you're right. Trump is a disintegrated personality, but he's actually paving the way for these folks who are actually far more organized, like the Charlie Kirk types, who are now using him as a cudgel to batter the political opposition into submission, so that they can then institute their version of what they think a proper society is, which is Judeo-Christian nationalism, which, folks, is a frightening prospect. Suddenly, Handmaid's Tale seems like it's not such a fantasy anymore. You sent me an article that I thought was interesting from the Daily Economy called "Abundance of Contradiction: Progressives Discover Public Choice." Now, there's been an attempt, of course, on the left, since they've lost the narrative and Trump seems to be controlling the news cycle. They're looking for leadership and they're looking for a message to get behind. Now, previously, they were just sort of sticking their fingers up in the air and trying to figure out what it was the public wanted, and then trying to latch onto that as a means of acquiring more public support. But there's this thing called the abundance movement that's going on in the left now that seemed to hold some promise, because it seemed like the left was embracing market economics a little bit. They weren't so they understood that, well, the market brings abundance to the world, and some of our policies are about scarcity and deindustrializing and dehumanizing in the world. And maybe we need to understand that abundance is a quality that we want to embrace. But the article points out that the way in which they think they can acquire abundance is not through the free market system as we think. We understand abundance to mean you open up mines, you open up trade, and suddenly abundance is the natural result of free minds and free markets. Liberty begets abundance. Now, it might not beget it in the way that the leftists want it to, because they talk about income disparities, and they get their panties in a wad that some people are richer than others, and it really, really bothers them. And so they want to control the economy. But it certainly makes the poor wealthier. Everybody gets richer, and everybody has the opportunity to grow and get richer. So it talked about this abundance movement as being really sort of the same shit dressed up in a different bag. They want to use the state as a means of creating this abundance. What did you think of this article?
Well, first I want to address Scott. Scott says seeing Trump's followers M2 is just coincidentally a way to rationalize preferring the Dems for years. First of all, if you listen to a word I said, you'd know that I did not categorize all of Trump's followers as M2. I said there's some, especially in the leadership class, the influencer class is who I was talking about. I'm not trying to rationalize anything. Sure as hell not preferring Dems, because I've never one time in my life, Scott, and I've told you this before, so I don't know if you're slow. I don't know what's happening, but I've never supported a single Democrat. Not once. Never happened. So, I mean, just the fact that that's where your head goes, maybe instead of having it the Ayn Rand fan club, just call it the Donald Trump kiss ass. Let's just do that, because that's all that's going on here. I try to be nice. I really do, Mark. I really do. I love to keep engagement polite and just, debate ideas. But notice that what's slipped in here, what this person is saying, what Scott is saying when he says it's coincidentally a way to rationalize, what he's saying is you are being dishonest. That this isn't an actual a conclusion.
What you really prefer are the Dems, and I got to jump in on that too. After you're finished, let me jump in.
Well, I just want to say, first of all, even when I was talking, I basically said it's a tentative hypothesis that's still going while I'm talking here. Scott says he was more referring to race than me. I don't remember. I don't know. Then you should have said so. Well, what else? I don't know. That's all I can tell you.
Look, I think a lot of objectivists, particularly when they're starting out, tend to gravitate towards conservatism. At least I did in the 90s, right? I got the Conservative Chronicle. I was reading the National Review, Reason magazine, and I found that a lot of conservative commentators like Krauthammer and Soule and Walter Williams, they were speaking a language that I could really understand, and I thought the conservatives at that time, in the 90s at least, had one foot grounded firmly in reality, at least in the area of economics. And so, as an objectivist, which I've been an objectivist for years, since my early 20s, I never really could relate to what the Democrats were saying. I thought they were consistent practitioners of their altruist ethics, but I found it extremely damaging and even evil at times. And I would say that outright. I lost my affinity for Republicans and the conservatives a long time ago, though. Now, just because the Democrats happen to be mouthing words right now that I think are appropriate to the situation, in other words, when Trump is, trapping millions of immigrants by ICE, and I think illegal and immoral and unconstitutional roundups, and the left is calling them on this for the lack of due process, we happen to accidentally align. And now we may align for different reasons. They may be preaching the proper line because they just hate Trump and want him to stop. And if they were in the same position with the same levers of power, they might possibly engage in the same thing. But I align with them, and I have to say they're right. They're correct here. That doesn't mean that I like the Democratic Party or that I favor the Democratic Party at all, because I don't. I find most of their positions and their basic moral premises utterly and totally despicable. But the right has lost all legitimacy in my mind from being a conservator of classical liberalism to now being national Christian socialists.
Yes.
And that is a very frightening combination. And Trump is enabling it. Now, Trump has no values. Trump has no political philosophy. He's going with whatever feels right for him. And so, in my view, it's the Stephen Millers, it's the Bannons, it's the high-placed, it's the Stephen Crowders and Charlie Kirks, the people like higher-placed, quote-unquote, intellectuals in the right-wing nationalist Christian movement that are really calling the shots for this guy, right? Before, in his first presidency, where he ended up firing a lot of people, it was the Federalists, who were informing him with respect to what kinds of judges he should place in there. He actually had his ear more tuned to proper principles by accident. But what did he do? He got rid of all those people. He got rid of them,
and has criticized them since,
and has criticized them terribly since, even though they are right and were right, and has now surrounded himself with Christian nationalists, yes men, who have a central planning orientation, folks. There is nothing free market about these people at all.
Mark, before I touch on the article and then Jim Valiant's question, my friend Brent, I was talking to him last night on the phone, and he was having a conversation with somebody, and the person he talked to said to him, "You're so hard on Trump. Why aren't you this hard on the Democrats?" And Brent responded, "Because the Democrats never meant anything to me. I never believed in the Democrats. The Republicans convinced me they were for something else, which turned out not to be true, which was constitutionalism, small government, local control, free markets. And it was all BS, fiscal responsibility." So he said, that's why. And when he said it, it registered so much for me. Because it's very much how I feel. Now to the article by it was a review of Ezra Klein and this whole abundance doctrine. I've always been flabbergasted by people on the left who are so mistrustful of government, and their solution to their mistrust of government and government corruption is to give that government more power. I would listen to guys in prison who, by and large, when they get involved in learning, most aren't, they don't fit really anywhere on a left-right spectrum. But once they start learning, most go left, and they would criticize the government, and then they would advocate for government control of healthcare, or government control of this and that. And I'm just like, I don't understand. If you don't trust them, why do you want them with more power? It did not make any sense to me. So before we get to you, and you're going to give the capital star of the day today, Jim Valiant asked me if I can categorize most of the left in dim terms. Just for the record, I have not read dim in probably 15 years. So I just want to be clear on that. So I'm going on memory. So if I make a mistake, it's on me, but just understand why. And Jim, I would think that it's very similar. I think there's people on the left that just want to tear stuff down, much as in the way of what happened during the French Revolution. There was people that just wanted to tear stuff down, and those I would categorize on disintegration. And I think that there are principled socialist communists that are on the left that really want to implement an agenda, an ideology, and those I would categorize as misintegration. So yes. I think, yes. And then I think they probably have their equivalent in what I've talked to, the people who just want affordable groceries, want to go to a job, be able to take care of their children, afford a home, that sort of thing. And they think those policies are going to get them there, much like a lot of the middle-class workers think that tariffs are going to help bring the jobs that they want back to the country.
Right, and I think the antidote for most voters out there is to educate yourself in basic economics. If you read Hazlitt's Economics in one lesson, that book in and of itself, which is extremely accessible. It's not like reading Mises, which can be a little dense at times. It's extremely accessible. You will not be fooled by political demagogues again. even if you read a Chicago school guy like Thomas Sowell in Basic Economics, and there's a lot of things about Thomas Sowell's economics I don't necessarily agree with, but it'll certainly give you a grasp of economics that will enable you to be liberated from the rhetoric of the political class, folks, which is only intended to gin you up and put you in a state of fear so that you are making choices based on your emotions and not on what you think or know to be true, right? Yaron Brook, when he was talking about the prevalence of right-wing violence, was getting a lot of pushback on his show, and he encouraged those people who were giving him pushback to show him the study that could demonstrate that Cato's study was false. I even did a whole Grok thing that said it came to the same conclusion, that right-wing violence over the last few decades has been higher than left-wing violence. Now, it's hard for us to believe, and maybe there's still a part of me that identified with that old conservative thing that was the preserver of classical liberalism and constitutionalism, but it's not. It's dead. It's gone. And we are now in the irrational phases of two tribes just trying to destroy one another. We're left with the false alternative of commies versus fascists, of the false alternative of these two statist collectivist types that are just trying to gain control so that they can then exercise power over the constituencies that they choose. There is another solution, folks, and that is capitalism, which is based completely on the free, autonomous individual. That means you are the captain of your own destiny. You are a human being with a rational faculty and the freedom to choose, meaning the freedom to think or not to think. And that if you think, you have the opportunity to direct your life towards success and to the actualization of your potential. If you don't, of course, you have the opposite potentiality. And we want that kind of society where you are free to rule over your life, and no distant bureaucrat in Washington or some state capital can tell you what to ingest, what time to get up in the morning, what's good for you. They can direct no aspect of your life. They can direct no aspect of production. All they do is is protect your rights and your property, and that's it. And by the way, when people say Donald Trump gave the best speech at the UN, I want to say no, he did not. Malay gave the best speech at the UN, and I have retweeted it on my Twitter page, folks. If you want to see what a real speech is from a real leader and a politician who really gives a crap about principles, political principles and economic principles, as flawed a man as Malay is, he's the best politician in the world right now. And if we had a Malay here under the Capitalist Party moniker in America, I think he would completely decimate the tribes, because I see the world out there, I see Americans out there as being totally and utterly fatigued with this tribal warfare, and they want a way out, and the way out is the American Capitalist Party, AmericanCapitalistParty.org. Make sure you like and subscribe to this station, share it from YouTube to other platforms. Well, you've got 23 hours to check your premises before Q&A tomorrow. What?
Well, we have a question for them. Remember, we asked them a question now.
Oh.
I know you've been gone a while. Maybe they didn't go up there and tell you. I don't shine shoes anymore. I hope everybody gets the reference. But no, we ask a question every day, and my question for you guys today.
I got the reference. You're a Goodfellas guy.
Yes. Yeah.
A
friend of mine said that to me last week. We were out to dinner, an old friend, and he said to me, "Look,
I don't say anymore. I don't shine shoes."
Yeah. He said, "I don't know if they went up there and told you." You know, Scott says, "Go get your shine box." I often think that that'd be a good thing to say to somebody in a roast, but then I remember what happened to the guy that said, "Go get your shine box," and I rethink the whole thing. But anyway, the question of the day is, where can I get a good source of information? You know, what newspaper, magazine, online journal, where is a good nonpartisan source of info? All right, Mark, now you can do your thing.
Well, thanks, folks. Well, we will be here same time tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern time. I may be here. I have to work tomorrow. I'm not sure what the call time is, so I hope I'm here to answer your questions. Call times get later and later during the week, usually when you're shooting, because they'd like to work nights on Fridays. So they destroy the crew, and the crew has 2 days to sleep it off. So I'm hoping the call time is late enough that I'll be able to be with you guys again. It's been a joy to talk with you guys again. As sad as I am, it's a little break from my sadness, and I appreciate you guys giving me the time to be here with you. So you have 23 hours to check your premises. Make sure you're checking good. If there's an ounce of statism in there, work it out, folks. And when you do, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have peace. And I wish that upon you. Peace. See you later.